Hello, and welcome to Character Class. Today, today I would like to talk to you guys about seven problem players, seven types of problem players, and kind of how to deal with them, but also how you, if you may be one of these types of problem players, ways that you may wish to deal with yourself in a way to mitigate those problems, because they can be issues. So I'd like to talk about them. Um, I have these like laid out in no particular order in terms of how they are ranked in best to worst or anything like that. They're in no particular order. Uh, so we're gonna jump right in and have a bit of a look. Number seven. Number seven is the type of problem player that I like to call the crazies. They're the crazy player. And what they do, the reason why they're the crazy player, they like to play characters that are crazy, not necessarily insane, not that may have a derangement or a mental illness or anything like that. No, that's not a necessity or a necessary requirement to be a crazy. Uh, what the crazies are players slash characters that like to, they may be perfectly normal most of the time. They may not be. But what they do is they will do completely out of the blue, out of left field, random shit for no real reason. Uh, Not a player reason and not a character reason. They're just doing it because it's wacky. It's crazy to do things like that. Um, a prime example is, for example, if you are sneaking around an area, or perhaps your characters are investigating uh, in a place that they're not supposed to be, and they don't want to get caught, so they're being stealthy and quiet. Well, a crazy player might start causing noise just for no reason, just because it's fun to do so. Um, if they're in a, if your characters are in a tense discussion with some rivals, or with elders in whatever game you happen to be playing, or important people that can cause a lot of trouble for your characters. Crazies like to throw monkey wrenches in the works and just wildly insult um, these people that you're talking with, even though it would be detrimental to your character's progressions and the story that's trying to be told. Um, they'll do it anyways because it's fun, it's crazy. I'm doing wacky things because I can, for no real reason. And these type of players can definitely cause a lot of chaos and a lot of hurt feelings, especially if their actions lead to something detrimental happening to another player. Now, these type of players are ones that, and a lot of the ways for you as a storyteller, or you as a player, if you aren't this type of player, and even if you are, um, but if you're another player and or an ST, and you see another person doing that, a lot of the best ways to go about it is to talk to them, to bring this point up, not not in a negative light or anything, but bring this point up to them, talk to them about it, um, lay the points out that this type of stuff is not the sort of game that you as a storyteller or game master may wish to run. Um, you are trying to possibly run a more realistic fantasy campaign, so just having wild crazy things happen, or if you're running a World of Darkness game, um, there's a lot of that lends itself well to realism, even though there's supernatural elements, because it's a very dark, gritty world. So that dark, gritty realism comes into play. And having somebody act all super crazy and just throwing monkey wrenches everywhere can detract away from that. Now, there's obviously um, certain types of games and certain types of play styles that this sort of player can fit in well to. Um, so it's all really up to you as a player if that's how you want to play. But if you may be one of these types of players, keep in mind that this type of playstyle may not be what your fellow players want to play with, and may not be what your storyteller or game master is wanting to have to work around. Because chaos from that can make things a lot harder on your game master for running things, because if they're trying to run something realistic and you go and do something which basically ends up turning what should have been an ally into an enemy for the game master, that's more work for them, especially if they haven't plotted that out. If they basically are handing you an easy ally, someone that's supposed to help you, and as that type of player you have antagonized them and caused this problem, then this can be it can cause more work for them, and it's never a good idea to um, cause more work and antagonize your game master or other players. But as a game master, as I said, talk to the player, get it out in the open that this is the sort of thing that can detract away from that. Could you maybe not do that? Um, Especially if their actions are going against what their character is designed to be. If their character wasn't designed to act like this, then having them act like this it's basically at odds with it. So that's something to keep in mind. Number six. Number six is uh, the loner. Now, the loner is another type of character that is and player that can cause problems for gaming groups and game masters, because the loner is the type of character that they usually take like the loner or the lone wolf archetype when they build a character. It's like they're used to doing everything by themselves. They don't want to interact with other characters, that sort of thing. Now, generally speaking, this is fine for a character, generally speaking. The problem comes when you are playing with more than just yourself and the GM. Because if it's just yourself and the GM, if it's like two people, then playing a loner character is very simple. There's no real complications that pop up. Playing with other players, however, um, generally speaking, the group is supposed to work together. Um, this is not always the case. Granted, I know there can be antagonistic parties that don't really work well together, um, but that's usually for more experienced players that are used to doing this sort of thing. Uh, for beginning players and for just in general, if you are going to be taking part in a role-playing game and you're going to be playing with other people, there's going to be other players and the GM and whatnot involved. Having a loner archetype, I would suggest it is good only to a point. So if you're going to do it, don't make it a complete loner. Um, don't make them completely not want to take part in anything, not want to help anyone else out, uh, not want to get involved in anything. Because then, why are you really playing in the first place? Is the question I would ask. You don't want it to be like pulling teeth to get a character to interact with other characters. That's not how you should really have things set up. Um, so it can be a problem, but not not the sort of problem that causes immense chaos, uh, just sort of problem that you'll run into if you're a player playing this and you want to play the game. Um, Wanting to play a loner character might end up pulling you away from the game rather than pulling you into it. So that's the sort of thing that SDs in general, I will say, if somebody comes to you wanting to play that sort of character, talk with them about it beforehand. Uh, kind of get a good idea as to what type of a loner character they want to play, how deep they want this to go, and maybe caution them against it because it's the sort of thing that uh, can cause difficulties. Uh, Number five, we're going to move on to number five. Number five, we have the diva. Now, the diva is more of a problem player than a character because the diva is the sort of player that always wants to be the center of attention. You may you may have run into this player before. The diva is the one that is always trying to include themselves in every scene out there, possibly always trying to take the lead as well. Um, and the diva is the kind of player that likes to get special treatment and special scenes from the game master and can get uh, upset when they're not involved, when other players are getting special scenes and their character's not involved in this special scene. Uh, this is this is a type of player that is a big problem. And as I said before, from the first one, talking with this player might be enough. I've mentioned it on another video I did about harassment and whatnot. But talking with this player may be enough to solve the problem. They may not realize that they're doing this. Um, Now, if they do realize that they're doing this and they just don't care, that is something that you, as a gaming group, need to talk amongst yourselves. But personally, uh, I am all for inclusivity. Uh, I think that there is definitely room for pretty much everyone at the gaming table, unless they are being disruptive and offensive or racist or sexist or anything like that. If they're going to be doing this sort of thing, maybe they're not welcome. Not at my gaming table. So it's one of the things you may want to definitely talk to them about. And if you are that type of player and you know you're that type of player, then maybe as a solution, you may want to um, try and pay attention to what you're doing. Try and curb those impulses to always be the center of attention. Everybody around the table needs to get time in. They're all there to play, not just you. Also, maybe play a character that doesn't uh, want to take the lead, that wants to be support, uh, as a way to kind of help give you some different uh, behaviors in terms of playing. Just a thought. Just a thought. Uh, but these types of players, the diva is kind of they're one of the really big problematic players because it all boils down to the personality of the player. And if the personality of the player can't uh, can't put themselves second in anything, then maybe they don't belong with your gaming group, as I said. Now we'll go on to number four. Number four is the stereotyper. Now, the stereotyper is a type of player that likes to play things other than themselves. Now, what I mean by that is, look at me. I am a white ass man. I am white. So white it hurts sometimes. Um, so when it comes to me role playing characters, I tend to role play um, white people. Not because I don't believe other races exist or anything like that, but because it's what I know. Now, that being said, I do play women online and in role playing games sometimes. Uh, I do that. I have role played other races as well before, absolutely. But it's not the majority for me because I know what my limitations are. So when it comes to doing stuff like that, I tend to put in a lot of research towards it. Now, the stereotyper, on the other hand, is the one that doesn't put in that research. Because the stereotyper, as you may have already guessed, likes to play other nationalities, other genders other than their own, and tends to do so in a very stereotypical fashion, which can be highly offensive to people of that gender or of that nationality that are at your gaming table. And this is one of the things that definitely can be solved by talking to the player um, and letting them know, you know, could you not do that? That's offensive. Uh, that's insulting. I don't like that you're doing that. Or as a player or as a GM, it doesn't have to be in front of everybody. You can take them aside and talk to them about it. Either as a GM or as a player, you can, talk to them respectfully. Now, if they don't reciprocate that respect, again, they may not be ones you want to play with or be at your gaming table if you're the GM. But sometimes, sometimes if you actually talk to a person, uh, they may not realize what they're doing is insulting or uh, offensive because to them they don't know of any other way. Um, that's one of the things about racism and sexism. It is something that people aren't born with, but they are taught it by the behaviors of those who raise them and those around them. And if they've only ever been around people that have firmly believed in the stereotypes, then they may not realize they're making that uh, they're making that equivalence in their brain. So maybe just talking with them might help curb that behavior. It's a thought. Uh, but if it doesn't, and if they still do this, then if you were finding it offensive as a player, uh, leave that gaming group. If you were finding it offensive as a GM, remove that player from your gaming group. It's up to you to police your gaming group. Now, moving on to number three. Number three is the rules lawyer. Now, this one is fairly obvious. Uh, the rules lawyer is the sort of player that knows the system you're playing, back to front and sideways, and translated into pig Latin. They know your system. They know the rules of your system. Now, any game masters out there or storytellers like myself um, may not know the entire system, but they know enough to run the game, and maybe they even do know the system just as well, but like to make changes, like to alter things, just to give some variety and whatnot. They like to house rule and homebrew. Uh, but the rules lawyer goes by the rules, and they will argue the rules with any other player and with the GM and the ST. Now, me as a storyteller, I have another player in my group here that is a storyteller in his own right. I play in one of his games. And we both know that we have different rulings on things. He has one way of ruling something, I have one way of ruling something. When we're playing my game, he plays by my rules. When I'm playing his game, I play by his rules. And his decision is final, even if he goes against his rules. Because there's always exceptions to the rules, and one of the things I love about White Wolf is the golden rule that they have is that feel free to change or throw out any rules in these books, which I love. Um, and I tend to do that with impunity. So the rules lawyer is the type of player that, unless they are extremely antagonistic about it, um, usually they can be talked to and basically mollified by telling them that's not the way this is going. Um, my game, my rules. This is how I'm doing things right now. Uh, so I haven't seen a lot of rules lawyer talk kicking around recently, um, but I know that they do still exist. They are the sort of player, if they are like particularly vehement about doing what the book says, um, the easiest way I've found to combat it is when they say, but the book says, and it's like, yes, but this is what I'm saying. And I'm the storyteller, or I'm the dungeon master, or the game master. Uh, and this is what I'm saying. This is how I'm saying it goes. The rules don't matter right now. This is what I'm saying. This is my ruling. Either accept that, or there's the door. Uh, I know there's a lot of what I'm saying here. A lot of what I'm saying is, try and talk to them, and if they don't want to talk, show them out. Uh, because really, that is the real big key to it. Is if they're not willing to listen to another point of view, they may not be the sort of player that you want to play with. Uh, number two. Number two are the min-maxers. Now, this is another trope like the rules lawyers that you may be familiar with. The min-maxers are the ones that, like the rules lawyers, know the system. And they know how to character create. And they know exactly where to allocate their points to give them the absolute best chance at doing whatever it is they want to do with their character. If they want to make a combat monster, they know exactly how to spend their points, exactly where to put all the dots, so that they are an absolute beast in combat. Um, and they usually tend to have their character progression plotted out uh, for the next uh, 50 sessions or something like that. They tend to know well in advance where they're putting their points. They're very organized in that. And while this can be a good thing, uh, it can also be a problem for the STs and for other players, especially if the other players are wanting to get involved in things, but the min-maxer is um, so perfectly optimized that they can handle anything out there and do immediately before the other players can get a chance to do anything. That can cause issues. Now, the best way to deal with that, again, talk to the player uh, and see if they won't take a more flawed version of a character. Um, See if they'd be interested in trying something out of their wheelhouse, not so optimized, uh, with some flaws and whatnot thrown in for good measure to make them not as perfect of a build. Because there's some people that basically solve the equation, and for them that's part of the fun, which is cool, which is great. But if they do like role playing as well, maybe you can get them invested in the actual role playing rather than the math. Another way to potentially deal with a min-maxer is maybe go for more narrative-driven campaigns that don't have as much in the way of mechanics to play with. That could be a way as well to solve that problem. Um, but generally speaking, I find unless a min-maxer is another type of problem player as well, they tend to not be as much of a problem player. But they can be. There's things to look out for there. Lastly, but not leastly, we have number one, the biggest, I find, the biggest problem that can be in any gaming circle, and that is the metagamer. Now, the metagamer is the type of player that uses out of character information to make decisions in character. So you could have a character that was not involved in, we'll say, a situation, wasn't involved in a situation, has absolutely no way of knowing that some person, some character, NPC, a bad guy, is a bad guy. They have no way of knowing this whatsoever. Yet, the first time that character meets this bad guy NPC, they attack them and kill them because they didn't like them. Even though there's no way of knowing, and this particular course of action is something that is completely at odds with how the situation presents itself. They used out of character information because they knew as a player that this character was a bad guy, but they didn't know as a character, and yet they decided that because they knew as a player they were going to kill this person and gain prop points or bonus points or what have you. This is a sort of metagaming that can be a problem. It is fairly big of a problem in online gaming, but it can also be a problem in tabletop gaming as well. It is one of the biggest issues, at least for me as an ST, as a game master, that, pardon me, of having that divide between player and character knowledge. You need to have it set up that in your mind, you need to make it so that anything that your character couldn't know, you then, as a player, cannot make a decision based off that information that your character couldn't know. One prime example in a vampire game that I was playing in with my buddy that I mentioned here, who's also a player in my game. I was playing in his game, and my character was in a very untenable position because his character, like my character, was a sort that would not agree to this heinous thing that he was trying. They were basically blackmailing him to agree to. He would not agree to it. And I knew, as a player, I knew that there was a good 85% chance that my buddy, as an ST, was going to have a way out of this for us. That there was going to be an out. So that all I had to do was have my character go against his nature. And he would survive this encounter. But because my character has no way of knowing this, my character also, it was against his character. I had to play my character as my character would act. So my character didn't agree to this, tried to leave, and ended up dying. I had to roll up a new character then. Because that is how it's supposed to be. There's going to be times when you may get yourself in situations that your character will die because you can't act on knowledge that you as a player know. You can only act on things that your character would know. That is the epitome to role playing. Because if you're going to role play, you're going to put yourself in that role. Uh, so that's a thing that I find to be problematic, um, and it's something that is really like you can talk to players about it and let them know, but it's really up to you as a player to get that divide going in your mind of what your character would know and what you as a player know. Those are not necessarily the same things. So that's it for this episode of Character Class. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope I've managed to help some of you and give you some ideas as to how to work around things. If you have any ideas as to how to help deal with these types of problem players, throw some comments in the comments section. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button as well, and tap the like button if you like what I'm doing. I'm doing everything all backwards here today. So do all that, and until next time, you keep rolling, keep making your characters, and I'll see you next time.